I just want to say it's been really fascinating this morning to listen to all the presentations, and especially about the data and the graphics, which is going to be very much of my presentation as well. My name is Helen, Helen Ilus, and I'm a graphic designer and a walker. I'm based in Estonia, and I have a small studio, High Design, in Tallinn Creative Incubator. I'm normally in my studio surrounded with my maps, but I haven't been feeling very well, so I'm home right now with my cat. If you don't know yet what Greenground Map is, I'm going to talk more about it. But it's pretty much an idea, a concept of a walking network in the cities, which is in a tube map format. And just gonna, you can see it in the background here, but we're going to come back to that. And I think I start with something just a little bit about my background and how someone who is not related in geography could actually come to work with maps or using the geographical data. My first degree was actually in tourism, but from the very early on, when I started to study and to sort of try to work in tourism, I realized it's not quite what I expected, because when you go and study tourism, you think you'll be able to travel a lot, and that's not always the case, because you will be servicing people who travel. And my goal was to travel myself. So I started to actually work in graphic design, because I was quite geeky. I think I was quite introverted. I loved working with computers rather than solving problems. And one of my first jobs was in the university. And I think it was really, really fascinating, because we had lots of information we worked with. And as a graphic designer, you have to take this information and convey it to a visual material that people find engaging. And I found it at the time quite hard, because infographics, when you're doing infographics and having a limited time, you get the information and it could be really different areas from the geography or maybe from academics who are in or health or anything, and you have to understand the subject to do a good graphic. So I really struggled it at the time, and I also still thought that I want to travel, I want to see the world. So as a second degree, I went to Bristol and did MA Media and Animation. And this is what I hoped I'd be doing. I wanted to work with stop motion. I hoped that maybe I can get a job in Arman, but it didn't quite turn out this way, because I think I didn't have this mindset that the stop motion animation requires, which means you have to really see the sequence playing out in your head before you get animated. And what I did end up doing was I walked a lot and I read a lot. And I lived in Southville in Bedminster, and I had a student job up in Clifton. So I walked and cycled a lot in the area. And Bristol is a unique city in a way that it's quite hilly, and you can pretty much see lots of it from this picture. So it was really intuitive to walk. I walked a lot around across the river, along the river, and Bower Ashton estate, because Bristol is a very green city, and I really, really enjoyed it. But at the time, I wasn't really thinking of the maps. I think lots of my walking was quite intuitive, and I learned some paths, and I used them I wouldn't say I was that exploratory, and I still didn't know lots of Bristol. So I was very lucky to have a chance to move to London and live there for a couple of years, and I continued walking. What I found at the time was that London really became sort of walking focused. Lots of people use I think just got out more and just walked a lot. And it was also the time when I believe the applied legible city maps were already distributed across London. So London became in a way more organized, and it was easier to walk. But I used a tube map a lot, and especially when going to the parts I didn't know, or it just made sense to me. And I found that certain paths were even quicker to walk than to go on a transport. For example, I lived near the Tower Bridge, and my workplace was in Farringdon. So going to the London Bridge station, which is huge, and traveling on a tube, which was really crowded, and towards Farringdon, it took me maybe 5 or 10 minutes more than walking in the morning. So I really got into walking and seeing the city from a walker's point of view. And then we went also walking with colleagues. And I have to admit, I don't think I ever planned any of these walks. And I was sort of going along and just enjoying these really lovely walks along the canals, along these green tunnels. But I had this experience of seeing the Greater London where I probably wouldn't have gone myself, as I was very often walking by the river again, because it just made it was easy, and I knew I wouldn't get lost. So here as well, my colleague is looking at a map, and I'm looking at a map, but I probably have no idea where I was. It was Epping Forest, which I found out later on. And then at the time, I also had a lot of opportunities to travel and see what was happening in the world. And even if I perhaps didn't think of it this way, I saw the High Line in New York, which was probably one of the first projects to actually convert highway to a greenway. I'm not very big fan of those approaches because I like when the trees actually grow in the ground, but I think it's still a very important movement in the modern cities to use the rooftops and use the bridges to make them pedestrianized and to create these lovely spaces. And then I had a chance to go to New Zealand. I'm not a big hiker, but I noticed that these in the long distance paths, you usually have these really nice signs that if you're somewhere far away, you can actually see them quite a distance, and you can orientate yourself towards these lines. So it kind of taking all this abroad. I did went to traveling for a year, and here's a photo of Melbourne, Australia. I really like trams. I think trams are a great way of transportation, and it's just going around the world, spending lots of times in cities, walking around a lot, because obviously if you're traveling for a year, you don't do something extraordinary every day. You have these days you just might want to, go for a walk. So I spent about 2.5 months in San Francisco walking around a lot, and just seeing everything what was happening and how these cities were laid out. So fast forward, I got back to Europe, and I got back to my cat is here, and I got back to Tallinn, And I had all these photos. And at the time I had this analog camera. It didn't have any geolocations. So I was back in Tallinn when I had more time, and my brain pretty much just crashed of all this information I had gathered, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I just sat down and I started to search from the Google Maps. So where I had been, where exactly I had done, because while I was traveling, I was pretty much walking, taking a photo, and taking another photo and not really thinking about it. And then coming back, I opened up the Google Maps and Google View and walk these this is Bangkok, and I knew approximately that the place we stayed, it was near a temple. It was sort of a white green alleyway. And then I had actually no idea it was sort of alley that went around the temple, and I found these things out while I was Googling. So that was about 2014, and obviously things got very different. And I did this for a few years, but obviously not all the time, but when I had time. But it became increasingly obvious we are facing the climate crisis, and we can't really continue traveling like this. And I got my travel significantly. I still continue to travel, but in Europe, and maybe twice or 3 times in a year. And before, I was just pretty much traveling maybe in every weekend, going somewhere. So it became obvious that things have to change. We have to reconsider the mass tourism, and because lots of the world is in under such a big pressure. And I started to think, how could I contribute this with my work? What could I do? As a graphic designer, how could I change? Could I take all these experiences, all these information, and apply it to my work, and just change my practice, change my habits myself, become more green. So the first things I did was just to practice, just to get some experience. And at the time in London, there was a national park city movement, which I came across on the internet, and I thought, this is such a great idea. And I'm just going to do some graphics and put them out there. I didn't know how to use Twitter so much, and I just started to do this sharing, and people actually like these graphics. And this made me really happy. So I continued to do that. And one of the ideas I proposed was a tube map, which connects parks with green lines. So the stations are replaced with parks, and the lines are not subway lines, but they are rivers, or they are assigned walks, or they are creative connections, and people really liked it. I was using, at the time, I was doing some research. I was using some books, like this was a great book, Information Design by Catherine Coates and Andy Allison. So it kind of, but all the transport systems obviously are for the transport. So I was starting to thinking, okay, how could I convey this in this new era of walking and cycling, where people are getting more independent with their travels. And I found some of the older researches, and I think this yellow book Legible London Yellow Book by Applied Information Group is a great resource still. It has information such as nearly 50% of people were walking using the tube map, and they concluded that the tube map is not good for this, but so many people did use it. So they found this easy to read, and although Applied went to the approach of making these really specific street maps, I found this information really good. And the other information I found that if you ask people how much of the Greater London area they know, that half of the people said they only know about 10% of London. Obviously, the key resources, the Harry Beck London Tube Map, which is already nearly 100 years old, and as much the modern London Tube Map. This is the latest one. So the first Greenground Map as an idea only had about 68 parks and 6 lines. And the idea was very simple, just to come out from the transport systems but use still this schematic approach to show in a way that people are already familiarized themselves of the transport maps. They already know how to use them, but show the natural features of the city. And many people found this really helpful. But it also got some criticism. People said that many parks are missing, obviously, and lots of areas are missing. So I continued to grow the map, and this map already includes the London Loop. So it actually is in the shape of London. And it was featured by the National Park City, and it was an open project. It was contributed by the people. It wasn't meant to be a commercial project. So this was in the spring of 2019, and I think in the same year, I also traveled to London and I walked for about a week. And 100 kilometers just to see how does it work? Does it actually connect? And I would say that it works, but it's probably taking more time as you anticipate, because it's not that straightforward. Yeah, so it has this, it really depends on the path. But I did get to see lots of green spaces I didn't know before. So the first paper map wasn't planned, but because we went to the COVID season and I didn't have much income at the time, and I thought, okay, this is the best idea I've got. I'm just going to give it a try. I printed digitally some maps. The first map run was 30, and then over the summer, I sold about 100 maps. But digitally, I think this London map had been viewed maybe by now. The number is probably 80,000, but at the time perhaps 20 or 30,000 times. So it got people liked the idea and saw that there's a potential there. It got some media coverage, which was great. And generally, it was positive. I think the positive news, it was one of the most read news of the positive news on 2021. This was one of the really important things for me, and the Greenground Map got to get the Greenground Map in Stanford's because as a traveler, Stanford is one of my favorite shops in the world, and just to see it there made me so happy. So a couple of more maps on 2020-21, Bristol and Edinburgh map. And then in a year, the London map sold about 1,000 copies. So the last year, I wanted to grow this idea because obviously London, the first map had 360 parks, but London has 3,000 parks. So there were still many missing. And also people kept requesting new lines, and this map had a capital line. It went actually out from the London Orbital and connected with Windsor, with other walks in south, and it kind of connected to the countryside around London as well. So if you want to walk from the city centre to the countryside and connect with other walking routes, you could do that with the help of this map. And this map was actually published, printed in the Print House, and 1,000 copies by the High Design. Last year was a great year in a way that other cities picked up the map. Sheffield was the first one to commission a map. I think they printed 22 or 25,000 copies, something like that. And they are all gone. I tried to get a map, and apparently they were all distributed. Birmingham, Cambridgeshire, and Peterborough, and Nottingham have commissioned maps as well. So there's been more media coverage, but it's getting more focused now. The Sheffield map there, which I think is pretty nice to see. The Bristol map is in the Clifton Suspension Bridge, which I think was really, really special for me, because I'm a really big fan of the Clifton Suspension Bridge. And podcasts. I had a chance to talk to Kit Rackley from Geogram Links, and it was really fun. The idea itself is not unique, and which I found out later on. There's been other takes on a map, and I chose a couple of that. But I think no one has gone so big, and also because I map the parks and open spaces, I think these are walking maps, but mapping the points, the interest points. The Montevideo City Council made a walking map, I believe, as early as 2013, and I did use this inspiration to put the distances on the Greenground Map as well. And Matt Brown from Londonist did a walking route map, a tube-style walking route map, I think somewhere around 2016. I might be wrong about that, but definitely a few years before the Greenground Map happened. So because the transfer maps are usually quite stiff.
1 minute, Helen?
Yes, I'm going to go quicker to that. I believe that the Greenground Map is more of the organic map and shouldn't be viewed as very stiff, but rather than kind of a route-based that can grow in different ways, that can have different layers, that can change really quickly. Because obviously we like to walk through the green spaces, through green corridors, and it also becomes necessity, which we saw this summer. Before that, it might have been something nice, but now we see that actually we need that. We need these covered paths for the people. So so Greenground Map is reimagining cities in the new era of active travel, and and that's all of me, from me, I think. If you want to have a look, I have a website, highdesign.ie. There's a shop as well, and I've applied a coupon for this conference of #Carter22, so you can use this to buy a London map at a discount price. So that's all.
Fantastic. Thanks, Helen. Any quick questions before we break for lunch? You can always leave your question in the chat, and I'm sure Helen wouldn't mind answering them. Quick questions. Love your ideas and designs from David. I just have a quick one. Do you only map cities that you've been to, or do you?
Yeah. As an independent projects, I tend to map cities I've been because I think it makes sense.
Right.
But as a commissions, I also map other cities because obviously they have the expertise there.
Oh, right.
To tell
Okay.
me if something is wrong. Yeah.
Great. And then a quick one from Brian. Have you heard about slow ways?
Yeah. The National Park City project was the idea by Dan Raymond Ellison, and obviously the slowways appeared about the same time as Greenground Map did. But I think what is really fascinating is how large. I mean, his project is gone so big in a way that is engaging so many volunteers, and I think it's really fascinating to see. But it's a great project, and I love that. Yeah. Oh, the discount code is the same as the hashtag was for Garto22.
Right. So I'll put it in the chat for those.
I think I can do that as well.
Oh, great! Excellent. Thanks, Helen.
I put it on the checkout. If you go and want to buy a Greenground Map, I just put it on the coupon there. You can get 30% off.
Great, and that's remind us again where to buy.
Yeah, it's. I think you have to have the.
Is it Stanford's or?
I believe they don't have them in Stanford at the moment.
All right.
You can get some from my.
Oh, right. I see. From your shop directly.
There's also a list of small independent bookshops that should have them in.
Okay.
If you go to highdesign.e and you want to buy them locally in UK, then you just check out the list of the bookshops there.
Okay, great, excellent.